Coming up this morning is a unique kind of setup. We are going to have a panel discussion by a group that's been a part of Austin's ministry called In the City for the City. Ashton can tell you more about that in just a minute, but the reality is the churches, I'm in Waco. We've been doing this conference for the last 3 years in Waco. As we were growing as our network, we knew we had to begin to expand around the state of Texas, and we'll be moving to different cities through the years. But when you go to a new city and you don't know many people that know this stuff, you really pray that God will give you some place to go. Well, we met up with ABBA. How many know what ABBA stands for? Austin Bridge Builders Alliance. And they are a group, that's right, we didn't say it right, didn't we? Make sure. And we found the most welcoming group. They have pastors who meet, and they said, well, let's just ask the pastors if they're okay about supporting this conference and the dates that we had hoped for. And I cannot tell you how encouraging it has been to be supported like they have done. They've sent out information about it. Austin is embracing what we're doing. And I want to tell you, I have been so encouraged by what God is doing in Austin. Now, I'm a Baylor Bear fan. I'll just be upfront about it. It's been really hard to hang around people in orange. But there are some great things going on in Austin, in the city, urban ministries, churches that are believing that God is calling the whole city together. So I'm so thankful to be here today. I'm going to introduce Ashton Cumberbatch, who is the executive director of the Seton Foundation. It's a foundation to raise funds for Seton Hospital, right? And he is a well-educated man in the area that we're talking about, and it's been such a great thing to get to know him. Dania Heffington is here from ABBA. Would you raise your hand? Okay. Any other ABBA people here? Any other pastors here from Austin? Austin pastors, I know we've got a few here. More will be coming. Well, thank you for being here today, and so I want to welcome all of them. Will you give Ashton a hand as he comes?
Thank you very much. And let's give Jimmy a hand. This is his vision, and he and his staff, a lot of hard work, and we thank you for sharing this sharing this conference with Central Texas, or with Austin. Amen. And while I'm going to say a few words, but while I'm doing it, while I have our guest panelists come up, and obviously I got a few folks here that are a little shy or whatever, because I know the question was asked, well, any pastors in the area raise their hand? And I know at least two looked at each other and didn't raise their hand. There may be more in here, so let's try that again. Are there any pastors in the room? If so, raise your hand. There you go. Look, amazing. More hands went up. Are y'all afraid, shy, or whatever? You don't want folks to know? Okay. Any pastors from anywhere on the planet? Raise your hand. Does that cover it? All right. God bless you. We thank y'all very much for the work that you do and the labor you do among us. As Jimmy said, my name is Ashton Cumberbatch. I don't work for ABBA per se, but I've been involved with ABBA from the beginning. As he said, it stands for Austin Bridge Builders Alliance. I'm on the board of ABBA. Dania is our associate executive director. She does great work for ABBA. What ABBA does, we're a connector. We're a resourcer. We build relationships between various parts of the body. How many of y'all know the body's supposed to be one body? Many members, but one body. All right? So part of the work that ABBA does is connect the various parts to each other. And then we connect resources in the body to needs in the community in which we sit. Amen? So please check out our website and find out some information. And I know Dania will be glad to answer any questions you might have for us if you would like to have an ABBA-like organization in your area. We get calls from around the country about how can we do this. I won't spend a lot of time talking about what ABBA does because we're short on time, but we do think we have some good things that God has birthed in us, and we've been doing for about the past 10 or 11 years, working with pastors, not competing with pastors, bringing pastors together to do good work in the community. The word tells us that we are to pray for and seek the peace of the city in which God has sent us, right? Everybody knows that, Jeremiah 29. Well, I suggest to you, in order to pray for and seek the peace, the wholeness, the welfare of the city, you need to know something about the city. Many times we come to the city and we say, God sent me there and we got a great plan for the city and I'm going to save the city. And we fail to take notice or understand what's already going on in the city, to understand the history of the city. Who are the peoples in the city? Who are the leaders in the people? Who are the underserved in the city? Who are the disenfranchised in the city? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the strongholds of the city? Some people use the term exegete. A lot of times we use that term when it comes to a scripture, but the term is also being used now to talk about exegeting a city, knowing your city. So today, we're going to spend some time with the panel this morning with two individuals who have some tools that can help us exegete our city or our community. Amen? Amen. Paul, in the 17th chapter of Acts, when he's in Berea, says some things that lets us know that he knew Berea. He knew what was going on. He had spent some time studying it. And it's important to do that when we come to a city. Let me just read a couple words about that. Exegeting a city or neighborhood is a basic task of a missionary, where you seek to draw out the meaning of a people and place in order to see the power of the gospel more fully transform the neighborhoods in which we live. So this morning we have two individuals who I think can provide us some tools, I know they can, that can help us better understand our community, wherever it is, no matter how large it is. First we have with us Vanessa Soria. She's the executive director of CAN. Throwing a lot of acronyms at you so early in the morning, huh? CAN stands for Community Alliance or Advancement Network, excuse me. I've known Vanessa, I guess, since she's been at CAN, which is how long now? 2007. She's done a great job. CAN, and she's going to tell you more about it, but it is a partnership of government, nonprofit, private, and faith-based organizations from the Central Texas area which leverage mutual resources to collectively improve social, health, educational, and economic opportunities in our community. As a convener, informer, and connector, CAN works to enhance awareness of issues, excuse me, strengthen partnerships, connecting planning efforts, and support development of collaborative strategies. CAN's areas of focus in 2014 include updating the community dashboard, which you'll hear more about, and I think everyone has one in their packet. Yeah. Which provides an overview of the overall social health and well-being of the greater Austin and Travis County area. CAN also is hosting safety net forums to identify resources and address gaps in the social service safety net, promoting cultural competency, inclusion, and diversity in organizations serving low-income populations or any population, conducting an inventory of prevention and intervention efforts and systems serving children and youth, and enhancing community engagement practices. Vanessa serves in advisory capacity to a broad range of organizations throughout the area, working to collaboratively enhance the community's well-being. Let's give a warm welcome to Vanessa Soria. And sitting next to Vanessa is Brian Kelsey. He's the principal and founder of Civic Analytics. Who here knows what analytics is? Well, Brian's going to share a little bit more about that. We have some more folks here have their hand up. Anna. Prior to founding Civic Analytics, Brian was a senior advisor at the U.S. Economic Development Administration, where he engineered a $37 million grant program to drive innovation and job growth in 20 U.S. regions. He also spent 5 years at Capital Area Council of Governments, leading economic development planning efforts for 10 Central Texas counties and more than 60 cities. He's a lecturer at the University of Texas at Austin. Sorry, Jimmy. But if you want and ask nicely, I'm sure he'll be willing to go up the highway to Waco and speak there as well. Teaching graduate-level courses in economic development and serving as a fellow at the Center of Politics and Governance. He's a co-author of Measuring Regional Innovation with Randall Kepner and a frequent contributor to stories about Austin's economy in the Austin American-Statesman. Let's welcome Brian Kelsey. All right. So the format, that each one is going to take a little time and make a presentation for you and give some information about their organization and what they do as it relates to understanding cities. And then we'll have some Q&A from you as well as from me. And who's going to kick it off? Vanessa? Oh, great. I'll tell you what, I haven't figured that out, so let's just swap mic. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me? All right. I feel like standing up, singing, doing something. That was an amazing beginning. I am a person of faith, and this morning I was having a little rough weekend because, the in-laws were in town, and you know how things happen. And I found this butterfly in my pocket, and my name means butterfly, and I didn't even know it was there. So I said, it's going to be a good day. So anyway. All right. So my name is Vanessa Sadia, and Ashton just introduced us, our organization. If everybody can turn to page 2 of the report, I'm going to fly through this. You'll see that our partners are higher ed and hospitals, the Workforce Board, the Transportation Authority, municipalities, and other organizations. A lot of the key organizations and institutions that drive the work in our community. So CAN, as Ashton put it, is a convener, connector, and an informer. Sometimes think we're like wedding planners or matchmakers. We're bringing people together to develop relationships and common vision and common goals, and we foster their relationships so that the community can benefit from their collaboration. So, when Ashton read our mission and our vision, it's really about giving people an equal shot at opportunity, okay? That means that we create pathways to opportunity for everyone to reach their full potential. And the pathway to opportunity is paved by many things, by your health, your education, your job opportunities and transportation opportunities, and so on. And so that's why it's so important that in trying to fulfill our mission of equity and opportunity and creating that pathway for everyone, that we have to involve all those stakeholders that have some kind of stake in that. So when I started in 2007, this was about 6 years after Ray Marshall, the former Secretary of Labor, had to Jimmy Carter, he had convened a social equity commission in Austin, and they realized, our leaders realized in our community, that we had more and more inequity, a sharpening divide between the haves and the have-nots. So they hired me, and they said, everybody was saying, we want action, and I said, action to what end? What are you trying to achieve? And they said, well, we know we care about equity and opportunity. We know we have to pay attention to that. And Ashton was one of those leaders, actually, that really was fostering that. And so what we did is we brought planners and researchers from all the different partner organizations to identify some data points that would help us determine whether we were getting closer or further away from that vision. If you guys look at your reports, on page 5, you will see that the vision statements listed on the left. And on the right-hand side, you have our dashboard. And what our dashboard shows you is a snapshot of data. Okay, folks, God knows truth. All we have is data. Okay? And so it's whatever stories you want to tell from it, but, that's important. The dashboard is kind of like the dashboard of your car. You're headed towards the horizon and your destiny, and you want to know whether you're getting closer or further away from your goals and your vision. And so it kind of helps you figure out, this light's going off or something's wrong. We need to check with the experts to drill down and see what's really going on. Okay, so every year we update our dashboard report, and I'm going to just highlight a couple of key things that we've learned. That is that we have a fast growth of the general population, with the low-income and poverty populations growing at a faster rate. We have low-income populations sprawling outside the urban core into areas like Maynard, Del Valle, and Pflugerville. We have a population that's quickly diversifying. Almost half of the kids under the age of 18 are Hispanic in our community. And the Asian population is growing in leaps and bounds, really posing challenges for us meeting the language needs of the populations. We have income disparity, especially along ethnic and racial lines. And if everybody looks to page 4 of your report, you will see that Hispanics and African Americans are making in the 40s, while whites and Asians are making in the 70s and 80s. So we have huge disparity in household income. We have a large young working age population, which is a tremendous opportunity and the envy of many communities around the country. So, a couple more things that we've learned. We're one of the safest communities, but unfortunately, African Americans are disproportionately represented among those booked into jail. Okay? We have one of the strongest economies with a 3.8% unemployment rate, probably lower than that, but African Americans and people with disabilities have double, triple unemployment rates, and it's not just about jobs, it's about income. Okay, and I already told you what's happening with the Hispanics. Hispanics are making $5,000 less now than they were before the recession. So not everybody is really recovering in the same way. So as income is increasing and going back to pre-recession levels, housing prices are increasing at a faster rate, really putting the pressure on families. And so we have 18% of our population's food insecure. Why? Because their family budgets are stretched. Food insecurity is really about that families are paying for gas and for housing and for electricity and for childcare and for insurance, and then there's nothing left for money, so that's when they have to go to the food banks. Okay? And then while we have the homeless, of those who are federally defined as homeless, those numbers are declining. We are serving about 14,000 people annually. We're serving about 2,000 to 2,800 people every day in our emergency shelters. Okay? We are achieving air quality standards according to the EPA, but our congestion, as we push people out and people are driving into jobs, poses a challenge in maintaining those air quality standards. And while more people have insurance and smoking is in the decline, those with poor mental health and obesity are on the rise. And while high school graduation rates are improving, and we're seeing improvements in the percent of high school graduates who earn a post-secondary credential within 6 years, I want you to listen to this. 1 in 10, only 12% of low-income students who go into college or post-secondary education pursuing a credential actually get one. 1 in 10. So they're left with debt and no credential, which is a double whammy. Okay? Half of our kids are kindergarten ready, and that's a long way from our goal of 70% by 2015. Every one of our dashboard indicators has targets where we brought the community together to determine what is success. So, Clarence, can you put up the slide, please? All right. Okay, so remember, data is an aggregate of lots of people, but in the end, we have to pay attention to people. And so one thing that CAN does, and Ashton mentioned many things that we do, but we put most of our resources into convening and connecting, into bringing the data to life, into bringing into conversation and informing action. Okay? So I just told you how our community is changing. But the question we are asking is, are we changing the way we do business? And so we've developed these 7 principles, which is help me get a good start. And those are the 4 areas of our dashboard, by the way. Help me get a good start. That means focus on prevention. Consider my whole family. If a child is being abused, do you think they may have a sibling or a parent who could also use help? Provide services where people are. Remember, with the suburbanization of poverty, people are moving into remote areas. The superintendents of Manor and Del Valley will argue that they graduate their kids, but they can't get them jobs and higher ed opportunities out there because there's no transportation. Okay? So we have to provide services where people live, where they work, where they learn, where they play, where they serve in their churches and so on. We have to develop a system that works for people. The old system was everything was concentrated in the core of the city in I-35, but people are now, wow, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'll slow, is that God's message? Oh, it is. Okay, I got to stop. So I'll wrap it up. Respect me and talk to me in a way I can understand. That's about language access and treating people with dignity and respect and creating neighborhoods when people can access the full range of opportunities. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. I was getting ready to tell you, you can have some of my time because I'm not going to use my full 8 minutes. So if you got something else or any good jokes or anything. Okay. One other thing, I think we probably should have saved some of the singing until after all the statistics because we're going to need some sort of uplifting, momentum after we get through this data. Let me just take a couple minutes and see if I can expand on some of the things that Vanessa said. How many of you are from Austin? Okay, how many of you have been in Austin longer than 10 years? About 20 years. All right, so there's a couple people here who have that long-term perspective. For those of you, since it's the majority of you not from Austin, let me tell you a little bit about Austin. We are, if you look at the metropolitan area, which is 5 counties, we are roughly the 35th largest metropolitan area in the country. There are about 360 or so big metro areas in the country. We are roughly 35th. So let me throw some statistics at you just to try to put some numbers to what this change has meant for Austin in the last 13 or 14 years. So keep that number 35 in mind. 35th largest in population. Population change, so the raw number of people we're adding since 2000, this is all since 2000, we have ranked number 10. 35th largest, 10th fastest growing in number of people. If you look at the growth rate, so the percentage change in the number of people in Austin, we are number 2, behind only Raleigh, North Carolina, which is my hometown actually. If you look at employment change, so just the raw number of jobs, how many we had in 2000 versus how many we have today, number 7. Job growth, percentage, right? Percentage change in those jobs, number 1. And it's not even close with number 2. And if you look at the total size of the economy, so gross, what economists will call gross domestic product, right? The total value of everything that goes on, all the goods and services, and you look at the change since 2000, we rank number 21 in nominal change, so just dollar change. And in percentage change, we rank number 3, behind only Houston and Portland. And Portland's kind of a funny one because Intel has a really big presence there. So as Intel goes, sort of Portland goes with it. So really, I mean, if you take them out of the equation, we're really number 2. We're the number 2 fastest growing regional economy in the United States behind Houston. So for those of you who've been here 20, 25 years, maybe even 30 years, would you ever have believed that there would be a day where tiny Austin, Texas would be, the number 2 or number 3 fastest growing economy in the United States? Now, I think if you're being honest, most people would probably say no. I got here in 2002, so I don't have that really long-term reference, and I probably wouldn't have believed it if somebody had told me, and I study this stuff every day. So let me sort of come off that and talk and try to make this link to some of the challenges. And let me preface that by saying, Austin, believe it or not, Austin likes to believe it's special in a lot of ways. Austin is a very special place, I would be the first to tell you, but we are experiencing some of the challenges that big cities and big metropolitan areas across the country have dealt with for decades. The difference is we are experiencing them on a very condensed schedule. It's happening here much faster, and we're not used to it, and we weren't prepared for it. So, if you look at long-term inequality in places like San Francisco, in places like New York, in places like Washington, D.C., it's not surprising to hear about fast-growing housing costs, purchase or rent, inequality in wages, because those regions, unfortunately, have gotten used to that story. Austin, that wasn't our history. That wasn't really our legacy here, that kind of inequality. So I think the reason people feel like things are changing so rapidly and so much is because they are, and it's a very condensed schedule. So let me just, two points I want to make. One is about wages, and one is and I'm going to bring that to housing costs and talk a little about inequality. A large percentage of the population growth here is due to very well-educated people, either graduating college here and staying or moving here from other places. And if you look at all the places across the country, we are actually the 4th fastest growing place for people with at least a bachelor's degree, behind only Charlotte, North Carolina, and these are large metros, Grand Rapids and Las Vegas. Okay, and Las Vegas is a little bit funny just because of the housing boom and all the people that moved there, so I'm going to throw them out for now. So Charlotte is really sort of our equivalent if you look at that part of the country. But other places like Raleigh and Nashville are also up there. So adding a ton of very well-educated people here very quickly. And if you look at the difference in wages, people with a bachelor's degree or better here make, on average, about $85,000 a year. People with a high school diploma or equivalent here make about $46,000 a year on average. Now remember, this isn't straight out high school. This is on average. So, you could be near retirement and still have that high school diploma. So there's about a $40,000 wage gap between people with a bachelor's degree or above or people with a high school diploma here. And again, it's not unique to Austin. That is true across most metropolitan areas. The difference is it's just happened here a lot faster. We're adding that well-educated population much faster here than a lot of other places. So if you take that average wage, so for bachelor's degree or better, I said it's about $85,000, $86,000. If you look at what housing people will tell you is affordability, which means spending no more than 30% of your income on housing costs. And remember, that's housing costs total. So that's utilities, that's other things in addition to rent. Okay, and I'm just going to talk about rent. You can afford, at that wage, $85,000 a year, you can afford about $2,100 in rent every month without really, really pushing your budget. If you stay under that 30%, around $2,100 a month. If you have a high school diploma here, you can afford at best about $1,100 a month. And if you have less than a high school diploma here, which is about 140,000 people, 140,000 workers, you can afford less than $1,000 a month, about $944. So how many places around Austin do you believe you can get these days for $944 a month in rent? There are some. I actually did a search yesterday. I'm doing this presentation for the Board of Realtors later today. There are properties you can get here for less than $1,000 a month. Are they suitable for families? Not usually. Are they clustered around the university where it's packed with students? Nothing against students. I teach, and so, let that be clear. But probably not the most kind of family-oriented neighborhoods, right? So we are experiencing a housing crunch here. If you do not have a bachelor's degree here or better, you are going to struggle to make ends meet today. In the region, median rent is about $1,600 a month. As you go to the city, it's about $1,700 or $1,800 a month. And if you go to the urban core downtown, we're at about $2,300 a month, and that's median. That's median rent, okay? So think about what I said about those wages at various education levels. You are not going to get past that $1,600 a month unless you have a bachelor's degree or better. And just to close, let me kind of bring this back to inequality. As Vanessa said, we do have a lot of disparity in the labor market here. We have huge gaps in workforce preparedness in terms of people with a completed post-secondary degree and the people who don't have one. For Asian residents here, 67% of Asian residents have a bachelor's degree or better, which is unbelievably high. For whites, it's 49%. For blacks, it's 23%. For Hispanics, it's 17%. So the vast majority of workers especially the African American and Hispanic population groups here, cannot afford what we are seeing really as median rent these days anywhere close to city center, much less a place like downtown or the very, very urban core. So that's I want to kind of end on something encouraging, which I hope we will get to kind of here in our moderator system, because I do think there are things we can do about this, but it's also important to kind of know where we stand and what the starting point is.
Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate it. Y'all can give him a hand. It's okay. So again, the backdrop for this is praying for seeking the peace, the welfare of the cities where God has sent us. It's not enough for us to prosper. In fact, what it says is, if the city prospers, what? We will prosper. So first things first. So the whole idea is understanding what does it take for the city to be whole. What does it mean to be whole for that city? You must understand the baseline. Where's the city now? I won't know will I get to success or wholeness or welfare unless I have an understanding where we are right now. So with that said, Brian and Vanessa, a few questions. Dania, how much time do we have? 10. Oh, not including the audience. Oh, okay, thank you. You had me going there for a minute. Okay. With that said, you dealt with it a little bit, but tell me how the data that you all have is helpful for people to understand their city. Just give me a couple minutes on that.
Well, it's interesting because I think we hide our poor in our community very well. It's a very strange thing to say, but I was downtown this weekend, and there were a lot, I'm a Latina, I'm Hispanic, and there were a lot of people that looked young and more white, and all the streets were full of them. But when you go into the schools and you go into the lunchrooms, you see like a sea of Hispanic kids, okay? And so the data helps us kind of peel the onion and help us understand what's really going on. I think that Brian hit the nail on the head that it's it's hard to talk about this, but it kind of tells you get closer to the truth of what's really going on. You know, I was teaching a class the other day, and one of the students said to me, well, you know, we shouldn't pay attention to race and ethnicity and all of those things. We should just pay attention to the aggregate numbers. And I said, all right, we have a 3.8% unemployment rate. Woohoo, we're done. We're awesome. Story, that's the end of the story. Or we're number 1, 2, 5, 6 in all the top 10 everything. Great. We have the best economy in the country. All right, we win. That's the end of the story. But no, we know that we have to pay attention to the needs of all workers and all people in our community, that everybody has a role in the economic prosperity of our community. And frankly, if we don't pay attention to what's happening to the low-income populations, and if that low-income population continues to increase at the rate it is, then what's going to happen is that we're not going to have enough tax base to support our future infrastructure.
So before you start, Brian, one of the things I want to make sure everyone heard is that the data helps uncover that which many times the magazines, the newspapers, the TV, all the ads don't tell about our city. A lot of the pain that sometimes you see in the pews every Sunday. Those aren't the folks that hit the top 10 lists when we talk about how great a city that we're in, et cetera. So the data helps uncover that so the church knows where to apply the ointment, where to apply the balm. Brian, before you go, let me just get a better understanding of who's in the room here. We talked about Austin and the state of Texas, et cetera, but who lives in either Travis, Williamson, Hayes, Caldwell, or Bastrop counties? Raise your hand. Okay. How about the Waco area? Okay. Dallas area. Houston area. Okay. East Texas. Okay. South Texas. Okay. West Texas. Have I left out any area inside Texas? Thank you so much. Panhandle. You know, sometimes you got to speak up for yourself, you know? And we talk about no needs among us, and we're talking about the data helps uncover, but sometimes we need folks to speak up and say, hey, I'm over here. You guys have forgotten about me. So thank you for doing that. So some of the data that the folks have shared with us, any of y'all that are here in Texas, or we have some folks outside of Texas too, don't we? What states do we have other than Ohio? Where in Ohio? Columbus, that's right. My wife's from Cincinnati. New York. Where in New York? Where in New York City? That's close enough. I'm from New York City. All right, so that's all right. Where else? New York, Ohio? State? Okay, that's cool. Oklahoma. You're okay. You're safe here. Don't worry about it. It's all right. It's okay. We won't let anything happen to you, okay? I promise we won't. It wouldn't be the Christian thing to do. Kansas. All right. All right. So, but for those of you, you're not from Central Texas, but did any of that data resonate with you? The disparity in income? The lack of affordable housing that resonate? And y'all come from a place where y'all have abundant, affordable housing? Oh, okay. Because we were going to run to your city if that was the case. So I just want us to make sure you understand that even though we're focused on Central Texas here, a lot of the data is very similar where we go. We may have a concentration where we have some of the highs and lows that other places may not have, but I think you'll see that some of the data points be very similar no matter where we are, their needs. Brian.
And let me pick up on that for 1 second. And for those of you, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, you may be sitting there thinking, well, this doesn't really apply to us because we have affordable housing. And it is true. If you go out 40, 50 miles, I got a brother-in-law lives in Frisco, Texas, outside Dallas. You go out 40 or 50 miles from city center, your housing is much more affordable than here in Austin. But go back home and look at some real estate statistics and look at the housing prices as you move toward that center city, which I'm told is where a lot of this upcoming generation, these millennials and those who come after them, want to live. They want an option to live a place where they don't have to drive an hour to work every day. And those price differentials start to in places like Dallas and Houston compared to Austin. So don't let yourself off the hook. Go home and look at the housing data, because the housing markets are funny things. Data. To me, it's all about being intentional. I met a guy while I was working in D.C. named Bomani House. He grew up, his dad was an activist in Pittsburgh. That's how he grew up. He's carried some of that work in Southeast D.C. And he uses a great phrase when he talks about intentional economic development. He talks about building direct and deliberate bridges, and making sure that prosperity is inclusive. And to me, inclusive and sort of sustainable prosperity, my students, whenever I start the semester on this class, they always ask me, what does that mean? What does sustainability mean? What does inclusion mean? And to me, it's when the majority of people have the option to live whatever kind of life they want to live. You want to rent? Great. You want to buy a house? Great. You want to go and get your certificate after high school and do it in a way that's not going to put you in debt? Great. You want to go to a four-year university? Great. It's about options. It's about options and living how you want to live. And in Austin, those options are quickly declining for a lot of people, because we've just gotten to a point where it's gotten so expensive in the central part of the region that people just simply don't have the options like they used to in terms of living how they want to live. And if we can agree on data, agree on what reality looks like, and there's a lot of disagreement sometimes, but if we can agree on reality, we know how to measure improvement and hold people accountable to it.
I want to say one thing too.
Sure.
Right on. I think that was very eloquently said. You really can't come up with solutions unless you have a common understanding of the problem. And that's why you need data. And the example I was giving about why it's so important to know we have those young millennials downtown, but we have a lot of Hispanic kids in the schools. We were, I was talking to the HR director of our school district, and he was saying when they hire people, they really try to hire from within Austin, because people from the outside have this idea that, Austin is, doing great, majority white, and we have almost 65% of our kids in Austin Independent School District are on free reduced lunch. So when they get to the schools, they're like, "What? Wow! Like, I didn't know this." Right? And so what Ashton was talking about is, the difference between what people see in magazines or on TV versus what's really going on for those who are trying to provide services, for those of us who are trying to give everybody an equal shot at opportunity. It's really important for us to understand different neighborhoods and different populations. Thank you.
Right. Before we go to audience questions, Brian, I have one question for you. If someone here in the audience wanted to understand the past, present, and potential or purpose, I like the word purpose, the purpose of their region, where would they start? What data points would they start with? What organization would they start with?
Most large regions have some kind of public planning process. Here in Austin, we just went through a new comprehensive plan for the city called Imagine Austin. There are probably similar things in Dallas and Houston and San Antonio, and those reports can be a bear to get through. I mean, these are big, boring planning documents, and I do this for a living. But within those reports, they're usually little dashboards or snapshots of what's going on in the region. And if you're interested in something that is not listed there, and you think there's a story to be told with some data that's not, part of the kind of accepted set of indicators for your region, call Vanessa, call me, and we'd be glad to help you and point you in the right direction to the data that you'll need.
And in addition, and thank you very much, and we'll make sure folks get your contact information. But is there an organization similar to what we might have as Capcog here, or that are in most cities or urban areas or even rural areas?
So in Texas, just Google Council of Governments. Council of Governments, wherever you are. In Dallas, it's called the North Central Texas Council of Governments. In Houston, it's the Houston-Galveston Area Council. But if you just Google Council of Governments, that is the place where counties and cities, elected officials, come together to tackle regional issues. You all have one. For those of you in other states, they may be called something else, but you all have these big regional planning organizations that maintain data.
Even Oklahoma would have something?
Even Oklahoma, yes. Even Oklahoma.
All right.
I do want to say, Ashton, that it's very important that, one thing to look at place. Okay, we have been more and more focused on place-based planning because we're growing so fast that different areas of our community are really different from each other. Like north I-35 Runberg area, there's a lot of immigrant populations in that neighborhood, and then if you go to south to Dove Springs, there's more Hispanic. So you have to be careful not to put all the neighborhoods into think that a region, every neighborhood looks like what the regional numbers look like.
Yeah, that's an important. Before I start passing the mic around for that. One of the things we know that the data can give you state view, and Brian touched on this. The state view can give you one view of your state or one view of your region. The regional view, the county view, even the zip code. It's important at some level of understanding, exegeting your region, to understand at the neighborhood level. Because even inside the same zip code, you can have different demographics. You can have different data points that give you a totally different view of the region. So make sure, and there are various mapping tools and organizations that can help you do that so that you make sure that you're not overlooking a need area because you looked at too high a level. So please don't forget your neighborhood and don't just look at the zip code or county level. With that, questions? And
just to follow up on this line of questioning, I'm wondering if community colleges or other local institutions might be helpful in getting down to the neighborhood level, because I can imagine that the Council of Governments is going to be more regional, but if we're going to focus on our neighborhoods, we need to know what our neighborhood looks like, as you've said, and I'm just wondering if there are resources in higher education or community colleges that can help those of us with that.
Frankly, the community colleges, the healthcare districts, the municipalities, the cities, the counties, they all collect different slices of the data. And so that's why CAN exists, because we try to bring it all together and really make sure that we're telling more of a holistic story. Remember, Ashton was talking about all the parts of the body. And there are a lot of higher ed institutions like UT. I mean, frankly, around the country, there are indicator projects. Hannah Brown, she works for me. Raise your hand. She's going to be giving a presentation on Thursday afternoon about data. And many of them are held by higher ed institutions. The challenge, though, is that data is only data unless you have the conversation to bring it alive and you tell stories about it. Okay, so you've got to have us. The other part of CAN, and I was saying, was that we're a convener and a connector. Yeah, we can collect data all day long, but we're not out there connecting and trying to tell a story with the data and informing action. It doesn't do much good.
So municipalities, so your city planner may be a good place. Your local community college may have a planning department for that. If you have a four-year institution, they may have a sustainable indicator project, as Vanessa said. So there are a variety of places, and if you don't find a place, again, feel free to call either Brian or Vanessa. Next. All right, okay, right here.
I'm curious, I want to go back to the previous conversation a little bit. I'm curious about the metadata and how these data points on the dashboard, how did you arrive that you want to measure those indicators as opposed to the 36 others that you could have looked at? So please talk about that just a little bit.
All right. So 200 pages of data is not really informative. Right. Okay? And so that's what we realized. So actually, Ashton and our leaders said, okay, we need a snapshot of our community's well-being. We know that we can't put everything, we can't look at everything because we just don't have the ability, the attention and the manpower to do that. And it's not, frankly, it's not helpful. Now, if you want to go and look at a lot more, you can go to communitydashboard.org. But what we had to do is we used results-based accountability, and we looked at 3 criteria. Number 1, data power. The data exists for what we were trying to identify. Number 2, proxy power, like food insecurity, kindergarten readiness, high school graduation rates. It's a lot more. Those things lead to a lot more other kind of successes. So a proxy means it's relevant to many things. And then finally, communication power. Some of the metadata is really complicated, performance measures, things like that. That's not really helpful to the public. I mean, frankly, you could be assessing the well-being of an organization and it could be stellar while the community is falling apart around it, right? And so the third thing is the communication power. So we had to make sure that we got all of these researchers together, and they meet every quarter. And the importance of that is, I had some young researchers at the beginning, and they're like, well, I can easily do this in one afternoon. And I'm like, well, what's the point? And sure enough, we had a meeting where the director of health said, I don't agree with these obesity numbers. Where'd you get them? I said, actually, it comes from your public health authority, right? So that's the power. I really try to get on my staff and say, you need to be working with the experts in education and workforce and the healthcare district. They're the ones. We need to be using their indicators because they're lining up their strategic plans and budgets to those indicators. Okay?
My question is, I know numbers is good, but numbers, show whether that if it's a great thing or a bad thing that's happening within your city, positive or negative. And when you were saying that, more individuals are moving to Austin and getting jobs, and you want those who live in Austin to get a chance, how do you go about that chance? So if I have a degree and I'm African American, like in my city of Columbus, Ohio, I'm getting beat out by, my white counterparts, not being racial, or my Asian, and our Hispanic and African American community have degrees too. They have masters, and we're still getting beat out. That's a problem. Like Michigan has done away with affirmative action. What measures do you have ensure to give us a fair chance to get that job, even though we're educated?
So I've got a two-part answer.
Great question.
That is a great question. And I said I was going to say something encouraging before I was done here. So here's my encouragement. We know what works. So let me get away from you personally, who already has that degree, already has that credential, and talk about people who don't have a credential. We know what works. We know what closes the gaps. We know the role education and workforce training play. We're just not willing to make the kind of investments as a country, as a state, as a region, as a city. And I don't care if it's Austin, Texas, or somewhere else. We're not willing yet, I think, to have a realistic conversation about what it's going to take to close these gaps. So that's number one. But we know what works. And we got nonprofits here that do workforce training that have excellent return on investment information, tracking people over the years as they go through training and then go out and get a job somewhere and look at the wage differentials compared to a control group. We know what works. We're just not quite there yet to be ready, I think, to make the kind of investment that's required. Your point about what are we doing to make sure that everybody has equal shot, which I think is what you're getting at. It's hard to know how to answer that without knowing more about the situation. But what I can say is that for difficult conversations like that one, data has a wonderful way of kind of forcing honesty and encouraging people to be real about what's going on. And that's the role of these indicator projects. And they can be as micro as you want or as macro as you want. But if you put unbiased, objective information out there and you don't overwhelm people with it, make them drink out of a fire hose, you can have better conversations about what to do about things.
I want to jump in there. I'm very passionate about this one area. I don't know how much time we have, but okay, we have been hyper-focused on what services, and we know what works. But now what we're realizing is we really got to pay attention to the how and the who. Who is providing the service? Do they look like the people we're trying to attract to those services? Where are we providing those services? Are in the city core? Are these families living so far away that congestion prohibits them from getting to those services? The how is, are we providing culturally competent services? Are we providing language access? So like I'm saying is, the data says one thing, but CAN is using our tables also to make sure that we're talking about the where and the how and the who as well.
So, and let me add my 2 cents on that. And Vanessa used a key term there, cultural competency. And then Brian, I think it was Brian earlier, used a word, intentional. So we have to be intentional. It has to be a focus. So imagine, how many of y'all are worship leaders? Okay, how many of y'all lead anything in your congregation? All right, great. So suppose I came to your congregation and let's say I spoke Spanish. Would you just ignore me? English wasn't my first language. Would you look to be intentional about making sure you can find some ways to integrate me so that I have a better way of understanding the worship service? Right? You'd be intentional about it, right? Even if it's just one person, right? And if you had a group of people come, let's say 10% of your congregation all of a sudden became non-English speaking first language individuals, you would definitely become more intentional about finding a way to integrate them into the worship service, right? Providing services for them. We need to have the same attitude when we look at various parts of our population. And someone talked about equitable opportunities, making sure that everyone has an equitable opportunity, and looking for, I can't spell, and looking for, to make sure that individuals, when we look across the board, particularly, and the data does drive out what you're saying. A lot of people say, oh, you're just whining. We've had data within the last 10 years. You take individuals, the only difference was their skin color. They had the same degree from the same university in the same subject area. They were the same age. Everything was the same. They had the same credit history. Everything was the same except for race. And only one got the job. All right, so we know there's issues. So to the point, to Vanessa's point about being culturally competent, being intentional about understanding the various cultural codes, various populations, understanding that we have to be intentional about providing opportunities for everybody to participate so the whole city can prosper, not just portions of it. We've got, and we'd love to talk to you some more about it. We've have, I'm sorry, I'm told I'm out of time, but we have a program here. We'd love to talk to you about it to try and ensure, we're just starting, we're working with one of our providers called Capital Idea, which is a workforce development, but they put out 200 graduates a year. We've got 100 times that as far as needs. So we're working with our community college. They've in fact taken a need. So it's sort of a workforce development program on steroids, looking at those hard to equip individuals or individuals who started college and for some reason didn't complete it, et cetera, to get to some of the various populations that you're talking about. So we'd love to talk to you about that. So we've been talking about understanding our cities. And I've suggested to you that a good term for that is exegeting. And I'm going to leave you with 4 things that I think we need to know. We need to know what the story of our city is, all right? What's it calling us to embody? We need to know what is the core practice that the people engage in that helps shape the identity and sense of the mission of the life. You know, how do they spend most of their time in their city? The institution, what are the primary institutions that are shaping the city, and how are they shaping the people's identity and their destiny? And then we need to know the ethics of the city. How would your neighborhood and or city define success? So, understanding our city, you've had some tools here that have been shared with you. You have some resources that they're saying they're willing to make available to you so that you want to talk to them and find out how you can duplicate, or if you already have them, expand upon or build up some of the resources in your area so that you can exegete your city, so you can understand the life, the breath, the soul of your city, so that you can do a better job of praying for and seeking the welfare, the wholeness of your city. Thank you very much for your participation, and feel free to talk to them if you have any questions.